My background is in tech startups. I've been doing it for a long time, but it was those first one or two startups that I really learned the lessons, right? The hard lessons, and not just what to do, but what not to do.
We just got to that kind of junction where we were going to raise money to either just go kind of balls to the wall and kind of kill it as much as we could, or we would sell.
People think acquiring an M&A is this like hard down the line, negotiate, you're never going to get to that point unless people think they want to work with you. You've had multiple calls with them, they like you, they want to work with you. Only then will they pass you over to a DD team, and then you can really start getting into the hard things.
The goal with Exit Strategy is to create an educational platform that helps business owners and founders develop skills that will help them get their businesses sold. All right, guys, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on board today. So we've got two special guests, Brad and Ulrich from WizzPass. WizzPass was acquired by FM Systems, and we'll get into the story of that today. And WizzPass is a complete solution for the future of work, a platform that brings people together and elevates the workplace experience. Did I get that right, guys?
Yeah.
You did.
Great. Well, maybe we can start off maybe just with Brad, if you can give a little bit of background to yourself and, the journey to maybe meeting Ulrich and starting WizzPass.
Cool. Yeah, so my background is, it's got nothing to do with software, tech, or anything like that. I studied environmental management at Stellenbosch University, did my master's in environmental management as well. I'm from Cape Town. They moved to Johannesburg in 2010 and started working for PwC and their sustainability and climate change team, where I worked there for about 5 years. Whereas at that point, I was kind of getting pigeonholed into a specific role. And at that stage, I was kind of like, I wasn't married, didn't have any kids. And I just thought, look, if I'm going to start a business, now's the time to do so before I have any kind of responsibilities. I had met Ulrich at varsity. I know his wife from school days, so I kind of met him through her. And then that's kind of where our friendship started. He'll give you his background now. He was in kind of the tech space, so approached him, discussed a few ideas where I was open. Well, we were potentially going to do something between the two of us. And then kind of it kicked off from there.
And when was that? What year was that?
That was 2015. So we registered the business 2015. We actually only started kind of, I think, our first sales in 2016, but we got together 2015, started exploring different kind of ways and ideas of how to do what we wanted to do. And that's when we kicked off.
And Ulrich, what is your background and sort of your version of the story?
Yeah, so I studied at studies, as Brad mentioned, economics, finance background. Worked a little bit in venture capital. Got great experience with very early stage of venture capital, was basically non-existent in South Africa. And realized I actually wanted to kind of sit on the other side of the table, not be the VC. I was still very young, of course, so I had all that energy to find something. But I was always interested in tech, so I got kind of a bursary thing to go do my master's in media tech in New York, which I did. And Netflix had just started, and it was a very exciting phase in that kind of media technology. So I kind of taught myself technology and learned to code and do all that stuff. And then after that master's, I actually came back to South Africa and started my first startup. So there was, what was I? I was 24 or something, which looking back is just crazy because you don't actually know nothing. You know nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's true.
And then I did another one. And then fast forward, 6 years or something, and then started chatting to Brad. And that was when we kind of started WizzPass together. So my background is in tech startups. I've been doing it for a long time, but it was those first one or two startups that I really learned the lessons, right, the hard lessons that
Yeah.
could not just what to do but what not to do, and I think that helped a bit with WizzPass. So yeah, real world kind of background, I think.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
We've recently partnered with Kaya Creative Studios, who are just helping us put this whole project together, making it seamless for us.
Partnering with Kaya really feels aligned to our mission and our integrity of our brand. They really do have a full array of podcast-related services and products. The Kaya team have the experience, they have the insights, they have the understanding and the full medium to really help a brand kind of grow.
If you're listening to the show and you're interested in starting a podcast or making it part of your branding marketing strategy, you should get in touch with Kaya. It's an excellent service. Hope to make some amazing content out there.
I really want to focus this podcast on the sale process, the behind the scenes, what really happens, because I think a lot of business owners are really trying to understand how that works, maybe thinking about positioning their business for a sale and don't really understand all the nuances or how to go about the process. So I think a good question to kick that off is, when in your journey did you guys start thinking about selling or exiting the business?
So, look, when we started the business, I think we were both aligned initially to say we eventually want to exit. I think that's kind of an important step to take, because obviously if in my mind I'm thinking I want this to be a lifestyle business and I'm going to be around until I'm 60 working at WizzPass, and Ulrich is thinking, look, I'm only in for 10 years and I want to exit, I want to say you got a problem, but kind of you need to have alignment on goals of the business. So I think we were fortunate in knowing that we both wanted to exit at some point. When we actually got to the point of discussing when is the right time, it happened extremely quick. We hadn't been kind of harboring on the fact for 2 years, 3 years prior to exiting. I think it was maybe a couple of months before. We were in a position where we were growing perfectly fine and we could have easily kept on running the business as is. We just got to that kind of junction where we were going to raise money to either just go kind of balls to the wall and kind of kill it as much as we could, or we would sell. And I don't want to talk for Ulrich, but I think for me, it was, if I was going to give up equity, I was like, let's just sell. I didn't want to work for someone else, which is ironic because when we get to the end of this, we ended up working for someone else after selling. But my whole thing was that if we're going to sell equity, let's sell the whole business.
Okay, interesting. And how many years into your business was that?
So that was when was that? Or 2021. So
Yeah.
16, 17, 18, 19, 26 years in.
Okay, interesting. So maybe Ulrich, you can sort of paint me the picture of, where the business was at that particular stage. Were you, what was the revenue like? How many staff did you have? Like, in your mind, how did you know that, this business could be acquired and ready for, the market? Because I think a lot of people are not quite sure about timing and, what might affect their valuation or, buyer interest. How did you go about, selling your story to the market?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just touching on what Brad said. So we always, so there's two types of kind of startups, right? It's like the raise and raise again and then exit, or kind of bootstrap. And we were more in the bootstrap type of startup. We didn't raise a pre-seed and a seed and a Series A and so on. We did go more the accelerator route. We're part of Techstars and Grindstone. So we, how do I say this? We didn't. There's pros and cons to that. There wasn't pressure from VCs to sell and to get to a new kind of funding round and so on, which was good because we could focus on the business. But we did say to each other, we must always create, everything we do must be for the business as an asset for sale. So
Mm.
if we had to step away one day, would this business survive? Would someone else come in and want to run it and grow it and so on? And that's just a mantra I thought was good from day one for us. And then to come to your question around when and how. So as Brad said, we were growing very well. I think we grew 100% on year for like 5 years. Um, and we were at this kind of inflection point, and we're starting to get a nice number of international clients, and we needed to kind of put more fuel behind that international expansion and set up teams
Mm.
in Europe and the UK and the US, or potentially get a buyer. But we didn't really know what to do around the buying side. We were like, let's just start thinking about this. And then, okay, I can go into the how and how to create the teaser documents and whatever. But does that answer your question for
Yes,
now?
that's exactly what we want to go into, actually, because I think that's an important part of understanding, the actual process. That I'd
Okay,
love to hear how you guys went about that.
sure. So what actually happened, the buyer that ended up buying us, it was with these things, it was great timing. They were looking for something like to either create themselves or to acquire. And through a partnership of ours, a reseller of ours who's also reselling their software, he said, he's been saying for a few years, this is a perfect match. They should buy you or you should partner. And we would joke around. And then we just spoke to him one day and said, let's have a call. Maybe we should partner. And then we got on a call with one of their senior team and said, well, maybe you guys should just buy us. And they said, okay, well, maybe we should give us a number. It was all like kind of jokingly said, but you actually, you're putting that, planting that
The seed.
seed, and then
Mm.
they're going, okay, well, let's have a look. And I think that's important from what I've seen. People think acquiring an M&A is this like hard, like down the line, like negotiate. You're never going to get to that point unless people think they want to work with you, or that all the soft things have been done before. You've had multiple calls
Yeah.
with them, they like you, they want to work with you. Only then will they pass you over to a DD team, and then you can really start, you know, getting into the hard things. But the soft things have to come first.
Yeah, no, I find that really interesting. I think I've spoken to quite a few people where the eventual buyers are actually big corporates that they partnered with and built a relationship with through some sort of channel partner. And then that company can see, the fact that if they just did a few extra things to the company, they can scale it quite quickly. So I think
Yeah,
for people who are thinking about selling their business, that's a key part of their marketing to set up is like, okay, you can do, typical acquisition, but finding channel partners that can increase your scale and global reach can have quite a big impact on prospective buyers in the future.
for sure. For sure. So yeah, so just to kind of finish the answer, so that's like the soft intro. They want to potentially hear more, work with you, or they know you a little bit, and then what happens is that at some point you're probably going to need an M&A advisor. So yeah, we didn't know that this kind of obviously knew they exist, but didn't really know what they do. So if you start getting some serious interest, then what this person does is they come in and they sit between you and the buyer. Because remember, you have to, at the end of the day, also work with the buyer. There's probably going to be some earn out or something. So they're going to like you after the negotiations are done. So you can't be the
Mm.
same person arguing on price and clauses in the contract, and then put your other hat on tomorrow and go, yeah, yeah, I'd love to work with you, because so that's the role of the M&A advisor, is to get you the best deal while you can sit in the background and smile.
How
And
did you
then,
find an advisor? Was it like word of mouth, or um, did you just go looking for somebody?
yeah, yeah, word of mouth. Sorry, Brad, you can jump in, but yeah,
No, no, no.
word of mouth. We knew the Kiet van Zyl from Knife Capital. I'd known him from before, and so they weren't an investor, but they did had a chat to him, and they said, yeah, they can step into that role. But there's lots of good M&A advisors out there that have done these kinds of deals. So yeah, different types of businesses as well, different stage of businesses, depending how big you are. Some advisors will be better suited. Obviously, look for those that are experienced in your industry. The type and the size of your business is the best bet.
Yeah, I think kind of just also going back to that. Like, I mean, our timeline was like exceptionally accelerated. Like generally, like Ulrich says, you put together a little teaser doc that you send out to hundreds and hundreds of companies. You hope that you get a bite from 5% of them that are interested. You then have a chat to them. Ours was, we literally got introed to the CTO of FM Systems. He liked what we had to say. We had another call with the CEO where we discussed what we do, what we wanted, kind of from the deal. And he literally ended the call going, okay, our private equity partners will be in touch with you. And I think it was a couple of days later, we got sent a letter of intent, which was like, I mean, that's not the norm. That definitely isn't the norm. But
no, that definitely isn't
kind of
the norm.
No, so like we just, obviously from a timing perspective, we were just extremely lucky that we hit them at a point where they were out looking for a visitor management software at that specific time, which then also then put pressure on us because we were thinking, oh, this is going to take a couple of months until we get some interest. So it gives us time to get our ducks in a row before we actually need to start engaging. So that happened. And then, like I mentioned, we were like, well, shit, we actually need to get someone to help us because I personally have zero idea on how to negotiate, what to do in terms of like from a sale perspective. So yeah, we reached out to Kiet, who came to us and said, look, happy to help and assist. So Knife Capital brought their team on board to kind of assist in that M&A perspective. But I think, like Ulrich mentioned, the key aspect, I mean, I'd highly, highly suggest you need to get some experience in that field, one, just to cover you, so you know what's been spoken about at the table. But also, at the end of the day, they are colleagues. I didn't want to be sitting with them in 6 months' time knowing that they hate me because I try to squeeze more money from them or vice versa or whatever the issue it may be.
Yeah, exactly. And when you got the letter of intent, which I also called an LOI, I guess that's the first real sort of wake-up call to going, okay, this is real. Now we have to make some big decisions. Can you describe sort of like, what is on that document and what does it really mean? And then, where do you go from there?
Sure, I'll need to remember what's on that. I just remember looking at what are you offering from a price perspective? Are we good?
Yeah, well, I think that's a big thing, right?
Yeah, it was.
Sorry, you can.
No, I was going to say. So I looked at I literally went straight to it. I said, what are they willing to pay for it? It was exactly what we wanted. It came up in previous discussions of kind of what we were looking from a value perspective. So they were offering what we wanted. And quite interestingly enough, and it didn't work out this way, but in the LOI, they said, wonderful, we love the business from what we've seen. This is what we're willing to offer. We see great value. We'll complete the DD process within 3 weeks, and we'll make this a quick and easy deal, and everything will be done in 3 weeks. So obviously myself, and Ulrich were like, well, this is epic. We're going to get paid, and we're going to have everything done within 3 weeks. It didn't end up going that way.
Was it 3 months? 3
no,
weeks.
I think it was 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
I promise you.
Wow.
No, I think they saw it as like, we're coming in, we'll buy, and we're out.
Sure.
And what actually happened?
It actually only ended up being, I think it was about 4 months, 5 months. So in the greater scheme of things, compared to most deals, it was extremely quick. But it was far off of what they initially anticipated. But again, I'd rather take the 4 or 5 months compared to the 1 year plus that it generally takes.
And what was like the DD process? Like, what did they ask for? What were they looking for? Was it more than you expected? Was it pretty thorough? I think a lot of people don't really know what DD is actually, and if you're a business owner, it's always good to understand, like, if you're going to sell your business, there is going to be a due diligence process, and they're going to ask you for a whole host of things. And if you prepare that early and you set up your business well, that's not too bad. But if it's not set up well, that can be a very tedious process and very difficult to actually complete. So I'd love to hear your experience of what the DD process was like.
Okay, I'll take this one. Yeah, so very, very, very intense. Because remember, you also so we've got so in the LOI, there's depending on whether you're doing it on current value or sometimes you do it on future value. So forward-looking revenue. So by the end of this financial year, we estimate X, and they kind of hold you to that. So now you have to achieve the numbers that you said you're going to achieve while you're doing the DD. So it's like having a whole extra job. So the most intense 4 or 5 months of my life for sure. But yeah, so they look under the hood in every single aspect of your business. There's look, it depends on the size of your business as well. You don't if you can be honest sometimes and be like, I don't have that document. But it's one small risk for them that they can maybe say, okay, they don't have that one, but that's okay because they're this size business. But yeah, it's every single document, every single uh, shareholders approval thing. If you're a startup, just record everything, please. Like, don't think
Yeah.
a document. Just keep it somewhere. Try file it. It's tough to do when you're growing a business, but later on, 5 years ago, where is this shareholder sign off on this? And I don't know. That those little things will come back to bite you. But yeah, it's a serious process. They get outsourced people to come and look at the legal, to look at the tech, to look at the tax side. If so, massive like outsourced teams that they look at the business as a whole, but then they get these other experts. So you're often having to answer the same question 3 to 4 times in a different way to different people.
Mm.
And then there's this thing called deal fatigue, which actually sets in where you actually just hit a wall and you cannot like answer another request. Like, can you send me this and explain this again? And it's like I just can't physically. I cannot. But it's you actually just push through and you get through it. Yeah.
So that's interesting. And what do you think was the most challenging part of the whole sale process? If you have to look back on it and go, well, that was super difficult, and I wish we could have done this differently. Maybe Brad, maybe you can elaborate on your experience in terms of the challenges, and also maybe like the key lessons you learned throughout that process.
Sure. I think during the whole process, like Ulrich mentioned, so our deal was based on future revenue. It was a multiple on future revenue. So when we put together kind of our sales forecast for how we're going to get to that number, I think initially in my mind, I was like, we looked at all our kind of opportunities, we put a value to them. Anyone that we had kind of spoken to, whether it was a hot lead, cold lead, whatever it is, we put it down on paper and we kind of estimated how much revenue we would be getting from that. I think naively, I probably thought like, oh, wonderful, they'll just see this and we're all good to go. When it came down to the DD process, because it was based on that future revenue number, they spent a hell of a lot of time deep diving into each of those specific prospects, going, okay, how do you get to this number? And they like literally would break it down. We said it's going to be, argument's sake, let's say $50,000 that we're going to get from that client. Okay, now tell me how exactly that 50,000 is made up. And then you had to do that for each specific client. So it made you, you couldn't just kind of thumb suck numbers. You had to kind of think of exactly how on earth, how do we get to that number, and you have to justify it to them. So for me, that was just kind of a wake up call. Doing things differently, I don't think there was anything from the actual process where when we ended, I would be like, oh shit, I actually wish we had done this differently. I think the only thing that post sale that I kind of thought about was more along the lines of kind of discussing or putting down what a post merger looks like in terms
Yeah.
of my role and Ulrich's role, expected salaries when we go across. We didn't have any of that, so we kind of just did the deal and we said, okay, this is what value is. For we had a 6 month period afterwards where they call it like do no harm. So we just basically got acquired, and they let us run the business as we would be running. And then after 6 months, they started kind of engaging or kind of interacting with the business to try get both teams to work together. But in no form did we have, okay, Brad, or post sale, you'll be fulfilling this role, and this role. You'll be kind of being run into this position where you'll be earning X salary, because we had to do that post. So we got bought, and then we went to them and said, look, guys, we've been running at a kind of a start-up salary base to kind of keep costs low. We've now moving into your exec team. So we initially, well, I mean, we kind of want to be compensated to this a similar level. I understand that it's a dollar-based rate, but it just made the discussion a bit difficult because I've got no like kind of legal backing to stand on it. It's kind of just goodwill if they were going to increase us, not increase us. And then eventually down the line, also just with the role perspective, it kind of became a bit muddied once that 6 month period was up. It was like, okay, what am I meant to be doing now? I would kind of like more just of an understanding up front to be like, hey, this is what you're going to be doing post merger.
So did you not have an earnout strategy? Was it just a complete cash buy?
Yeah, so it was cash, and then we had shares in FM Systems.
Okay.
So majority was cash, and then a small component was shares in the business. There was no earnout period to the cash component. So we could have signed the deal on the Friday, and on Monday I could have resigned, and everything stands as is. What they used as an earnout kind of perspective were the shares. So if we left within 2 years of selling the business, I would get what I put in for those shares. If I left after 2 years, I would get fair value for the shares at that specific point. Obviously, our intention was we wanted to be in for when FM Systems sold their company, so we could cash out our shares at another multiple to whoever was buying, which did actually happen. So about which is actually, it's not 6 months ago, it's probably about 8 months ago now. FM Systems sold to Johnson Controls, which is a US public listed company. So we'll say luckily for us, we stuck around for this event because we knew it was going to come at some point. So we then essentially sold our shares in FM Systems at the same or at a multiple dollar value, which is essentially kind of, it was a good deal kind of all around for everyone.
Yeah, I guess I've quite a lot of friends in private equity in the US, and they always say you've got to get a few bites at the apple when you sell your company. They're like, okay, sell it, take 30%, roll it up into that company that's probably backed by a private equity firm that has a 5-year holding period that needs to sell it, grow it and sell it, but they're also buying up other companies. So, hopefully they'll be able to position it for a much better sale in the future. And, I spoke to a guy who had actually sold essentially his own company about 5 times in like 20 years. And he said, that was the real way to do it in the wild, wild west of the US, where there's sort of levels of capital, like, you've got mid-market private equity, large private equity, and then obviously the public market. So that was a really smart thing to do, I think. So, yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of people think once they get bought, just take everything out. But I mean, you've still got to invest your capitals somewhere, right? So you might as well invest it in the company that bought you. And then, if you trust that their plan makes sense, then that's actually a pretty good investment, especially if you're still involved.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think what made it tricky for us was, look, this private equity firm, I think in all the deals they do, they insist that the founders take equity in the business that's buying them. Just as, so like you say, it keeps you committed to the business, to grow the business. You're part of the company, so you're wanting to make it work for all parties. What made it tricky for us is that I think we were happy to put the cash into that business, but we didn't have an opportunity to do a DD on them. So we knew a little about the company. We had been following them. We
Yeah.
knew what they did on a kind of a face value perspective, but we had no idea from the inner workings how profitable is this business? Are they going to be around for
Mm.
the next 5, 10, 15 years? So we kind of had to go on the basis of goodwill that we, and like what they're telling us is true about the business, and also that there is a big private equity firm that is their backer. So touch wood, they've invested. Obviously, they've done their due diligence, so they know kind of where the future of this company goes. Um, so we were put in the dark, kind of just investing in the company with no real due diligence behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of like they're asking you for every piece of information about your company, and you're like, "So, how are you guys doing?" But you're not really in the position to ask that. There's always that like power dynamic going on where you don't want to like upset these people because they're about to buy your company, but also like how are they doing? Yeah, I think that's interesting. I guess if you have like 4 or 5 deals on the table, you could be a little bit more. Um, pushy about what you want to know about that firm and their future. But I totally understand why you would be in that position. Um, Ulrich, I'm quite keen to sort of understand um, the legal side of the process. So you guys are, I'm assuming, were registered in South Africa. I don't know if actually that's true. Maybe you had a US company, but to get a company overseas to actually buy a South African asset. How does that work from a legal perspective? I'm sure there's quite a few nuances involved in that process. What was your experience?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and there are a lot of nuances. um, but typically, yeah, if it's look, there's an issue about exchange control when you're selling a company in South Africa. So you
Mm,
can't just move it offshore. You have to get SARB approval, and it's a whole process. So to cut to the chase, what ended up happening is that the acquirer set up a company in South Africa, and then that company
okay.
bought our South African P2I Limited. So we didn't have
Oh,
to
interesting.
externalize the company. And they had done that before because they had actually, the private equity company had bought bought 1 or 2 South African companies before, so they knew how to do it. But I think it's quite rare to try rely on that. If you get other
Yeah, I haven't heard of
international,
that before, actually.
yeah, if you get other international buyers, they just go, "What's the sob? What's this? No, okay, no, wait, too much risk. Okay, bye bye."
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
um, yeah, so that was a legal hurdle, massive legal hurdle that we managed to get over, luckily. Um, yeah, and then the normal kind of South African nuances also became not massive hurdles, but you got an American private equity team on the one side, and then you've got SA lawyers on the other side who are explaining things like BE and again SARB, and even if you're moving money out of you're taking the shares out of the country, externalizing things like promissory notes and stuff, you still got to have certain SARB approvals, and these kind of things ring some alarm bells in their heads because they don't know, it's quite foreign to them. And the whole B thing was a bit of a what is this and is this a risk, and um, but with a lot of explaining and back and forth, they kind of understood that it's just part of doing business and it's not a risk to the business. So yeah, a lot of small nuances that are unique to South Africa, but they can be overcome. Yeah.
And what were the sort of like tax implications of that? And did you do some tax planning? Because I mean, that's obviously a significant part of a deal. You're like, oh, there's a lot of tax to be paid here. I actually don't even know what that entails, but how did the tax kind of play out once you had done the deal?
Yeah, look, as a South African company, you gotta pay your capital gains tax. There's no real way around it. So
No.
it just depends whether you've registered as an individual in the company, or maybe you've got another company that owns shares in the company that you're selling, and maybe that's owned by another vehicle like a trust or something. But at any point, regardless of the structure, you got to pay capital gains tax. So look, if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a startup, and you can foresee that you are going to sell one day, then you can do things like an offshore setup where you never get away from tax, but you can decrease tax in certain ways. But yeah, look, you're going to pay tax either way, so just know that in your calculations.
And did you guys hire specific legal and tax advisors as additional to the M&A advisor to form the deal team?
Yeah. So we had, like I said, we had kids and the knife capital team that did the M&A perspective. So kind of what their role was negotiation. Kind of if we had an issue, we would go to kids, kid would go to them and kind of bring it up with them. And also just getting our house in order. So getting all our documentation, all the meeting minutes, all the policies, all the contracts, everything that we needed, that we need to be put into kind of a data room. That's where their team assisted with that. We used Worksman's attorneys. We got put onto them. Kier had used them in the past, so he suggested them. And I can say it's definitely, you obviously pay a hell of a lot using kind of a big law firm, but it's worth every penny, because at the end of the day, that share purchase agreement, I think, is 150, 200 pages long. And realistically, myself and Ulrich aren't going to, we did go through it, but like, we're not going to pick up a random clause here and there to understand what that means. So
it's like you have to learn a whole new language, basically.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, we would go through this thing and we would be like, maybe that doesn't really make sense, but 80% of it, I don't really understand. So our lawyer would then she would go through everything. She would see what's been changed, what hasn't been changed. Because oftentimes they're meant to redline everything, send it back so you can see what's been changed. But there were 1 or 2 times where they forgot to do that. So our lawyers then run it through their kind of program where it says this has been updated, but it wasn't redlined. They get a bit agitated with each other because that's not the standard process, but she's there to back you up and she's fighting for you. So she's got your best interest at heart. So the money we spent on them was worth every penny, knowing that at the end of the day, there's nothing that's going to come back to bite us.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's I agree. When I got my first shareholders agreement, when I raised capital, I looked at it and I was like, this really, I don't understand this at all. And I spent like days trying to read it and learn terminology, but it really is quite complicated. And having a lawyer that I trusted, that was referred to me to go through the terms, pick up the difficult sort of clauses was invaluable. It's like worth every cent for sure. So I think getting a good lawyer is key. I mean, it can save you a lot in the future, especially when you have to work out the key terms. But yeah, I want to move on to kind of a slightly different topic now, which is like the emotional aspect of building something and selling it, and sort of what it feels like, and what do you do post the sale. I haven't experienced it, but I can imagine, there's some feeling of loss to something that you've like built. And then also like somebody else owns it now. And so you don't have that same authority in how everything works. But maybe, I'd love to hear both of your perspective. Maybe Ulrich, you can kick us off with just like, what was that experience like?
Yeah, I think, for me, it wasn't like a sad, it was emotional, but it wasn't like, there's nothing sad about it. If you think, okay, firstly, your product, your name is one thing, but your product and your team and your culture is probably what, is that, like where that emotion sits. So if your team and your culture and your product is expanding, then it's still exciting, right? So our product was
Mm,
starting to be used all over the world, but now it's going to be used by certain US government agencies. That's exciting. This is this thing we created in South Africa, and it's being used by the top companies all over the world. So that's a bit of a continuation that kind of didn't feel like an ending in a way. The product and the people carried on. So yeah, I mean, not all deals are like that. Sometimes they buy the company and they strip it and they lay off people. And I've heard that's quite hectic. But I don't think it was like that for us.
and for you, Brad?
Yeah, I think during the DD stage, it was so hectic that you had no time to think about kind of what the end was going to look like. I mean, we were literally kind of working day and night for those 5 months, 6 month period, because the private equity firm was on the West Coast. So we were kind of up at whatever hours it may be on
Yeah.
Saturdays, Sundays, during the week. So you like kind of just going, and you're just trying to get everything in order, not really thinking, okay, what is actually going to happen once they click the button and say, wonderful, deal's done. But yeah, I think like Ulrich says, it's the business was going to continue. And I think that's for me kind of put me at ease, that it wasn't just when we signed this deal, they're going to say, okay, thanks for coming. Cheers, everyone. And good luck out there. Like our business was going to grow into new markets. We're going to have a bigger sales force, bigger support team. So that was, it made you excited. For me over time, and it took time, was the aspect of giving up control
Yeah.
was difficult. Just, and not in a weird way, I like to be in control of my own destiny. So if something's not working, I like to know that it's not working because I'm not doing something that can make it function better. I don't want to have to rely on someone else to essentially do that for me. So after the integration, that's where kind of the emotional impact on me was pretty high, because it was out of my hands, and now I'm having to wait for someone else to make a decision, whether he's going to make a decision or not, to essentially kind of improve something, which kind of essentially led us to where we are today. Of no longer being there.
Oh, you both no longer there anymore.
Yeah, so we left in Feb this year, so it was a good 2.5 year period.
That's quite recent.
Yeah, so look, I think we did well. I think the general norm is about 2 years, from what I've heard from companies being acquired to the founders then leaving. So we did a good 2.5 year stint at the company, and it came to kind of its natural conclusion when FM Systems got bought out by Johnson Controls. Obviously, Johnson Controls were buying the greater business for their set purpose. And again, then we've been diluted from a 19-man company into FM Systems, which was like a 200, 300-man company, now into a 3,000, 4,000-man company. So you're kind of just going lower and lower and lower down the pecking order. So I think it came to that natural end where both myself and Ulrich were kind of, I think we've done enough, we've done as much as we could do, and it's time for new things.
So what's next? What's next on the cards? Now you've got some business knowledge, a little bit of capital. You've got some battle scars. What do you do now?
Yeah, I'll go. So no, it's an interesting question. I think we still kind of stepping away from the fire and just checking things out. Um, got some experience under the belt. So I think if we love to work together again if we can and see if there's another kind of startup in the midst. Maybe not. We'll see.
Interesting. Yeah, these are sort of like some really cool decisions. Good place to be though, in life to be thinking like that. It's like blue sky opportunity. Okay, great. So I mean, I think in terms of closing this off and really leaving the listeners with some key takeaways. What if you had to meet a business owner, they're thinking about selling their business, they haven't really thought about it before, and you were like, okay, I'm just going to give you advice, 5 points from my own experience. What would those points be from your perspective and what you've gone through?
Yeah, well, I'll go first. So for me, from the beginning of starting a business, like I mentioned earlier, it's having that alignment. If you do have a co-founder, I mean, obviously, if you're a single founder, then it's completely up to you. But like for me and Ulrich, it was being aligned on what the end goal was of the business. It made it a lot easier when it came down to deciding whether you want to sell or not sell. You don't want to get to a point of I'm wanting to sell, and then Ulrich says, no, I'm actually in this for the next 10 years. And then you kind of have this disagreement of what next. So I think kind of getting that set up in the beginning is a must. In terms of the actual sale process itself, it's getting all those documents that you need ready and just continually updating your data room. So regardless of whether you're going to sell this year or in 5 years' time, a company that's wanting to buy you, if they come to you and you go, here's a link to my Google Drive, here's all the documentation that I need, everything that you need is ready set up. For them, it's a positive. They're like, wow, these guys have their house in order. I want to do business with them because they know exactly what's happening, and it makes the process a lot quicker and seamless for them. Look, I mean, they obviously don't want to be spending months on end with their resources trying to go through this process. So the easier you can make it for them, the more enticing the deal would be. And then lastly, I think I was kind of naive in this aspect of when we kind of had our figure in mind, I didn't take into account, cool, I'm paying CGT. There's going to be legal fees. We had to pay escrow fees. We had to pay insurance fees. So there's all these little fees that you kind of pop up on the fund flow documents, and you're like, wow, didn't really expect that to be there, but okay. So it's kind of take your number and then think about what you actually going to come out with at the end of the day. And if that's good for you, then that's cool. But it's kind of just take it into consideration that the number you give is not the number that you're going to get at the end of the day.
Yeah, great advice. Thanks, Brad. That's really helpful. And Ulrich, on your side?
Yeah, I was just kind of zooming out on that. Good question. I think there's a saying: businesses are not sold; they're bought. Right. So, if we think about the idea that now one day you want to sell, like okay, now it's like this thing of selling, right? It's like this big thing, and it's like scary, but it's also like hectic. Like, it's actually not. If you have in your mind one day I'll sell to one of the buyers that I've been talking to. So, like you said earlier, a lot of it is often someone a partner you've worked with, someone that there's a bit of trust already. So, if you're thinking of selling in 2 to 3 years, don't wait till 2 to 3 years. Start chatting to people and going, you know what? Hi, I think one day you guys will buy us, but don't wait too long, because our valuation's getting higher every month. And then so it's that kind of thing I would say is the advice, and not wait. And I'm going to sell because now you're sitting around hoping someone comes and knocks on your door. You have to plant those seeds wherever you go, create excitement, people then talk about you and go, sure, that's a good company. Maybe we should snap it up before someone else does. But if you're not having those conversations casually, it's probably going to be highly unlikely that someone comes and knocks on your door. Having said that, when you do want to sell now, I think we can also demystify that a bit. There is a whole industry out there of M&As. So M&A advisors obviously come in when the deal's like on the table, but M&A advisors also come and go and find the deal for you. So if it's a seller, you want to sell, they can go and find a buyer. And buyers have M&A advisors on their books that go and find companies that are interesting to buy. And there's a whole massive industry around that. So as a founder, just run a good business, keep your docs in your data room, have your house in order. And if you want to sell, then you don't need to also go and find the buyer necessarily, because that's not your role. Your role is to be an excellent founder and grow an excellent business. You can get an M&A advisor who'll take a nice hefty fee, don't worry about it, but he can go and find the right strategic buyer for your business. And if you've run a really good business, he'll find a nice buyer for you because your business is attractive. So but yeah, just don't wait too long. Start thinking about that in advance. Get an M&A advisor to look at your business, say what's the valuation, and have those chats earlier rather than later.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, I think the focus, if you really want to sell your business, is show profitability, show growth. I think that's really what buyers are looking for. They want to see that the business is growing and that it's profitable, and that it can run. It's got systems in place that don't rely on like one person or two people to run. You've got to have some kind of asset, like you say, asset of value that can scale. And I think if those three things are in place, then people are going to want to buy, because at the end of the day, there's a big market out there of private equity money that is looking to grow their business, and the fastest way they can actually grow their business is to bring on an asset that is profitable, that they can scale. It's much quicker than doing it themselves, I guess. So I think that's one of the things that through the conversations I've had, a lot of people don't necessarily know, is that people want to buy businesses, but they want to buy solid businesses that have certain fundamentals in place. And I think you guys, of a lot of the people I've spoken to, like the reason your transaction probably happened so quickly was that you had really good fundamentals in place. You had consistent growth, obviously had a good team. You had channel partners, which I think is, it's so important. Once you've got those channel partners and those recurring revenue contracts set up, you become an extremely valuable asset. So I think you guys really did an excellent job in setting up that business for a sale, and much smoother than most people out there. So yeah, I just wanted to say congratulations, because I don't think it's that easy. It definitely hasn't been that easy to a lot of people I've spoken to. So yeah, I appreciate the time today and sharing your insights. I think there's a lot to be learned from how you guys have gone about it, what you've done. I've certainly learned a lot. So yeah, I appreciate the time on the podcast today.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for your time. It's been epic to catch up.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys. So I'm just gonna add maybe your LinkedIn's in the profile if people want to reach out and get in touch, if you don't mind. And yeah, look forward to catching up over a lunch soon.
Definitely. Enjoy Africa Burn.
Thanks. Cheers.
Cheers.